Hi everyone, so great to see everyone today with us. We have a couple of watchers already, and let's hope there will be more to join. So today we are talking about competitor analysis and monitoring with Awario, and we hope to share some great secrets, tips and tricks that you can use in your own monitoring. This will be a series of webinars dedicated to different goals and use cases that could be helpful if you are using Awario. And this is the very first time in this series. I'll be hosting the webinar. My name is Anna. You might know me from our Awario blog, where I post different articles about Awario and how to use it. I'm a content manager at Awario. And I'm joined by Dmitry.
Hi, everyone. I'm customer support team head at Awario. So you can think of this as a sort of a big demo day for me. So I'll be happy to show you around the tool.
Exactly, a big demo day. That's a good expression. So first, before we start, I must tell you that at the end of the webinar, we will have a little bit of a treat for you, you could say, maybe like an early holiday present, and we will share something that will help you use Awario even better and maybe save some money or time. So if you stay till the end, get ready for this little treat. Okay, so first, let's decide what we are going to talk about today. We have a couple of points to cover. First, we will, of course, talk about setting up Awario for competitor monitoring, what keywords to choose, what conditions to add, and what you should consider when you're setting up Awario for competitor monitoring. And then we will discuss such points as calculating your share of voice, which is very important compared to your competitors, discovering what makes your competitors more or less popular, what generates online buzz for them, what affects their reputation, so do people like them or not, and why. Awario can tell you that as well. And of course, sharing all these beautiful data and insights with your team, with your stakeholders, with your boss, and so on. So to do this webinar correctly, we set up some alerts already, and we chose sample examples for you. I chose this myself, and these were the brands that are quite niche. They have an audience of some kind, but they're not huge brands like Coca-Cola or Tesla or, you know, all these big names, because I wanted to choose something that will be relevant to our customers, and you don't need to like a huge amount of data to analyze these brands. So I choose niche makeup brands, and they all kind of share the same market, which I thought will be relevant in this case. So all these makeup brands have the same thing in common. They're all aimed at people who want to do natural makeup. So they are very much the competitors among themselves. And the brand that we kind of take as our own. So if I were to work for the brand, it would be 𝗏_cie. And then we chose 5 competitors for this brand, which you can see on your screen at the moment, which will be monitoring and comparing to 𝗏_cie, our core brand. So without further ado, let's probably start with the setting up the alert. Dima, can you share your screen and tell us how to set up an alert for monitoring competitors?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me then grab a screen from you for, well, I suppose most of the time. There we go.
By the way, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I'm monitoring it. So if you have questions for Dmitry, I will gladly ask him on your behalf.
Yeah, that would be great, since I have only 2 eyes and I need them both for this little presentation here. So I believe you should be seeing the screen right now. This is how Awario looks like, and this is what our pre-setup project looks like. But before we discuss what any of this means, any of these beautiful graphs and so on, we'll first discuss how we set up this in the first place. In fact, this is all pretty simple. after you sign up to the tool, you'll be greeted by a screen that will look something like this. Here you would choose what you prefer. In our example, that would be competitive analysis. So I just click here. And as you can see, it just has a couple of fields for brands to fill your keywords in. As Anna mentioned earlier, we will assume for a second we are 𝘆cie𝗂𝗿. And we'll do that to just demonstrate the idea of what keywords you should be adding. It's quite simple. So I just click here and I type away with the brand name 𝘆cie𝗂𝗿 first, 𝘰𝗿, our first keyword is done. Then we don't have to stop there. We can move on and add some more words, like let's say, I believe it was into the gloss. It's kind of like a tag that they use on their social media content. And of course, you could also add their website if you prefer, kind of like it says right here. That would be 𝘆cie_𝗿𝗏.com. As a matter of fact, you can add as many or as few keywords as you wish. There is no limit really. They can be in any language too, and you don't have to limit yourself to just a word. Your keyword can be a sentence in theory if you really need something like this. Naturally, this was our first brand. And then for our second brand here, we would add something else. One of those brands that Anne showcased before. It's exactly the same principle. So the brand's name, its handle, its hashtag, its website, its whatever. So yeah, you can just keep on adding more brands if you need. So yeah, it should get you started. Pretty simple. You just click Start Search and your project will be created. It will basically look exactly like it did on the screen a little earlier before. Let me just force my way back. All right.
Great. And there are ways to specify the alerts as well, right, Timo?
Well, if you, by specify, I assume you will mean make sure that you are not collecting trash, basically. And
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, this is a very popular question, very popular problem. And indeed, there are ways, there are many ways, in fact. So I suppose let's get to that. We'll go with 𝘆cie_𝗿𝗏 again. After you created your search, it will start monitoring immediately. Some results might come up immediately, but you don't have to fret about doing it perfectly straight away because you are free to go back to settings and make changes. And we'll explain some of the settings you could use to ensure your search is a bit more specific. So we'll start with more concrete ones. Next to the keywords field, or rather below it, you see the excluded keywords field. Simply put, those are the words that we ignore during the search. You can see that we've already added a few here, such as coupon, voucher. You can add some more, like let's say sale, or maybe some others that come to your mind. And essentially, any mention that contains any of these words alongside one of your keywords will be ignored. This way, you can really remove certain type of content pretty easily. So make sure to use excluded keywords if you know what you are looking for. One other way would be to use more specific keywords. It's a little more abstract, I suppose, but let's say, for example, one good example would be actually this keyword here, 𝘆cie_𝗿𝗏 cosmetics, not necessarily something else. Well, 𝘆cie_𝗿𝗏 is a fairly well-known brand, but still, if your brand is slightly less well-known, like an example I could come up with, let's say Tesla that Anne mentioned a little before. If you were to just type Tesla here, I'll just do it right there as an example. No need to lose me. It's pretty easy. Basically, you would find mentions of both the car company and everything else that is also Tesla, like the scientists call it Tesla, or the Tesla coil, like the technical part, or any other content that really uses the word Tesla. So instead of doing that, you use a bit more specific wording and do something like, let's say, Tesla vehicle. And this way, you require that both words are present. So 𝗏_µ and cosmetics, or Tesla and vehicle, or any other example. And this way, you basically make sure that mentions where something else is mentioned are skipped, because again, the likelihood of Tesla, words Tesla and vehicle appearing in reference to, say, Nikola Tesla is very much lower. Not zero necessarily, but lower. And one last way you could, well, last major way, I suppose I should say, you could prevent certain content from coming is by using the blacklist. As the name suggests, it's a list where you put in social accounts, websites, or anything else that you do not wish to hear from. For example, here we have our own Twitter account, some random website we have found earlier when we were setting up that project. And that's actually so yeah, you can just add handles here or websites from any of the platforms you see in this drop-down list, and mentions from these platforms will be ignored. Also, you can now block certain sources right inside of the feed. We'll get to that in a second. It's basically where your mentions will be. So this way, if you see something irrelevant straight away in your feed, you can just press a button and remove it and anything further from this account or website forever. So yeah, those are the major ways.
Obviously, we need to, if we want to make alerts more specific or get rid of trash, as you said, we need to do it to all the alerts, or at least all the alerts that kind of can bring trash.
Yeah, the idea here is if you're doing competitive analysis, it's in your best interests that alerts you create are as uniform as possible. Therefore, the only difference between them should be the keywords, pretty much. So doing something like tracking Glossier, but only in, say, Spanish, while you take one of our competitors, or well, Glossier's competitors, and limit language to, say, on German and Spanish at the same time. Let me just click German here for consistency. That makes no sense, because you allow extra data to be here. Therefore, the data is not, the conditions are not the same, basically. So yeah, you should make your searches as uniform as you can. And yeah, there is actually an easy way to do that. But I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah, basically, if you want to compare yourself with your competitors, you need to target the same market. So the same people who speak the same language, are in the same location, and use the same social media. Otherwise, it would be an unjustified comparison, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, I suppose it depends on what exactly you're trying to achieve, but if you just apply common sense, applying different comparison criteria to different competitors, makes little sense. The data will be, it could be compared, but there wouldn't be really a point. It's kind of like comparing apples and oranges.
Okay, so once we set everything up, how much time do we need to wait, if we need to wait any time at all, to like collect mentions and get enough data for some kind of analytics, for example, to calculate share of voice?
That's a lovely question. The answer to that is a little more complicated. Basically, you do need to wait. It's better to allow the tool at least a few hours to collect data, while depending on your search, some data might be collected straight away, like within a minute, within 5 minutes or so. Since Awario is, you could say it needs a little while to start up properly. So it's better if you allow it some more time to ensure the comparison is as accurate as it could be. The search is always going on. It's never stopping, it's never over. Therefore, it's best to allow it at least a few hours. The more, the better.
Well, luckily, these alerts were created quite a while ago in preparation for the webinar, so we have tons of data. So maybe let's see how to compare your share of voice and talk about a little bit why share of voice is important for our users.
Sure. Share of voice is actually pretty simple. It's Well, one thing to know here is it does not exist in a vacuum. It only exists when you compare something to something. And in our case, let's say we are 𝗤cie as usual. So I'll just click here. And to add something else to this comparison, I can just click right here on the comparison button in the top left and choose, let's say, the milk makeup and something, something third. Let's choose 𝗔𝗆𝘆𝘇𝗲 right here. We give it a second to load, and there we have it. Those are the mentions that were found for each of the searches in the past 7 days. Important distinction is right here in the top right corner. You can choose any time frame you like, and the share of voice will be right here. Basically, it's how many mentions were found for at each point in time. You can also see the 3 lines here for each of the brands. 𝗔𝗆𝘆𝘇𝗲 seems to have a lot of mentions this week, so they kind of overshadowed the other 2. This is normal, fairly normal. Some brands have, spikes at certain points, and the others have spikes at other points. So yeah, it's not really too much of a deal. However, in this case, it makes it a little hard to see, so let me just choose something else so it's a bit easier to see the 3 lines. Yeah, that's a bit better. These lines here allow you to notice how many mentions were collected on each day. Like, for example, you could see December 5th, milk makeup was the absolute winner. So you know that maybe something has happened on this day. And we can also see that all 3 brands have collectively fallen down the next day, December 6th. For some reason. So yeah, that's kind of how it works. Now, why is it important to know this? Well, basically, comparing yourself to someone else allows you to understand how much volume they are getting. And therefore, it allows you to assume kind of your own share of voice, pun intended. It allows you to see how big you are compared to some other people. And this is a fairly surface level thing, just looking at this graph. A more prudent way, of course, would be to go into specifics, like go into, say, milk makeup on December 5th and have a read on what exactly was said and decide whether it's content relevant or worthy of comparing, really, or not.
Yeah, so basically you can tell what kind of news or content from your competitors gives them a big buzz online or a big share of voice, and you can kind of decide if you need to add something to your marketing or content strategy to get a bigger share of voice online.
Yeah, the good thing is you could just have a look at what your competitors have been doing if they have a bit of a spike, and just siphon an idea from them or 2 and apply it yourself to get more buzz going. Buzz isn't necessarily everything for a brand. Of course, it depends on what you are doing and stuff. But generally speaking, this is still a good thing to know, to report on, and to use to inform your content strategy, to inform your business decisions, perhaps, or just generally get a feel on what is being said about each and every one of your competitors. You can also jump into a conversation about your competitor, let's say, and say that, hey, this kind of thing, for example, non-delivery of a product, does not happen with my brand, with this brand, or something along those lines. Maybe you'll steal a few customers this way. So yeah, another useful trick you could use.
And we have a question from chat here from Paolo Moretti, and they ask, what's the difference between reach and mentions when it comes to share of voice?
Right. Those are actually 2 very different things. Mentions, the graph we see right now and the one we've discussed so far, is for just pure volume of mentions, or simply put, just how many posts there were that mentioned one of your keywords. Reach, on the other hand, is a bit different. It's an abstract metric that shows you about how many people have seen content about the brand. So, for example, milk makeup here has 2.2 million people, 𝗤cie has about 900,000, and Flower Beauty has only about 100,000. We infer this metric by looking at how many likes, how many shares, how many responses, how many views or traffic content mentioning those keywords has got. Therefore, this is why we say this is an abstract number, because there is no way for us to give you 100% accurate estimate on how many people have seen this. So we just assume this. We give you an estimation to base your next steps off. That's basically the idea here.
Okay, I see. You mentioned that we can kind of peek into the negative comments on our competitors. Could you talk more about like measuring reputation and how we can understand if the competitors are liked or disliked, but that they're liked more than us or less than us and stuff like that?
Sure. This is where this little sentiment widget thing comes into play. Let's say we switch for a second to 𝘂𝗿𝗂𝗏 as one of our competitors and have a look at the sentiment widget here. Basically, it shows you how many mentions from this total number are positive, how many are negative, and the remainder to 100% will be neutral. So naturally, the way you will go about this is the same as we did with the share of voice. You'll select a second search, say 𝘄𝗶𝘁𝗵, if that's what you want to compare it to, and you will have a look who has more mentions, of certain type. In this case, the number of mentions are fairly comparable. 𝘂𝗿𝗏𝗏 has a bit more in general, so we can safely say that in this particular case, there is no big difference. Just taking into account how many mentions both have, it's about equal in terms of percent. 26.3 positive for 𝘂𝗏𝗏 and 22 for 𝘄𝗶𝘁𝗍. So like in absolute numbers, I would say it's fairly equal, but if it's more or less here, you'll be able to easily see it because this red thing will be bigger. If you need to investigate these negative mentions in a little more detail, you can do that by just clicking right here, for example, right here. And this should take you to the feed that is already filtered to negative mentions of this brand over the time period you chose earlier. Like, for example, this tweet made only 2 hours ago, actually. And this is definitely a negative post, since we can see that the person is very much disheartened by what they have received. And hey, that's our chance to bounce and say that 𝘄𝗶𝘁𝗏 does not do fesses up like this.
Yeah, that 𝘄𝗶𝘁𝗏 does full-size makeup for everyone.
Yeah, maybe, just maybe you should switch over. Yeah, that's the idea, basically. It's pretty simple. However, I will admit that looking at the graphs can only tell you so much. So generally, it's a good idea to always dive in a little bit more and have a look at what is specifically being said. There is a chance you will discover an account that kind of, sways metrics one way or another that you haven't blacklisted necessarily, like certain bots. For example, if you track certain kinds of products, there might be a lot of bots mentioning your keywords, like let's say you're tracking airlines. There will be a lot of bots, like, flight trader stuff. So you might want to block them to have a little less neutral mentions. But generally speaking, neutral mentions come when you enable web monitoring, because, you start finding store offers or sale offers or stuff like that, which have no sentiment per se. So yeah, abundance of neutral sentimented mentions is nothing to really worry about. It really depends on what you track and how you go about it.
Yeah, okay. Another question from the chat I have for you. How to compare yours and your competitors' markets? How can we see if there are any difference or overlap?
Well, one thing to have a look at would be the countries widget right here, which shows you where the mentions come from. This little purple thing shows you the overlap. So you can see that both have fairly decent presence in the US, for example, while 𝘂𝗏𝗏𝗏 is a little more popular in other parts of the world because, it's blue. So there are a few mentions from Canada, a few from Russia, even a few from Australia, while 𝘄𝗶𝘁𝗍 has a couple in Saudi Arabia, one in Romania, and some in other parts of the world too. So that would be one thing. Another thing you could have a look at, which is a bit more reliable in my experience, would be the languages. Basically, when you can just have a look at what languages mentions come in. Most of them are in English, likely, but there are some in others. Like, for example, there are quite a few in French for both. There are a few in Thai, actually, for both as well. And yeah, you can just have a look at the languages, and whatever is more prominent will allow you to see what kind of market certain competitor occupies a bit more than you, just by looking at those percentages.
Great, thank you. So now that we have all of this information, we know how to see our share of voice, how to compare if we are more popular or less popular online compared to our competitors, how to see their reputation, who is liked more, or which brand is liked more or disliked more, how to use negative reputation for our benefit maybe, and how to see if our markets overlap or we target some different markets and target audiences. How do we share all this information with other people, with like colleagues or bosses or stakeholders?
Yeah, this is pretty easy. Actually, there is this Neat Report section in the left side panel. You just choose the report type you like. So if you want to report on just one brand, you would use Mention Statistics. It's basically the same as the dashboard. It shows you all of these stats, all of these widgets for one search in, kind of a more vertical way, shall we say. You can rearrange the widgets to your liking, like let's say put sentiment on top, adjust the time frame you need. You can choose anything you want. Less than it is just the default option. And then all you need to do is click on this button in the top right corner, download as a PDF. This will download a file that you can then share by whatever means you prefer. If you want to share the comparison instead, you would go to another comparison board. It's very similar again. It will show you multiple brands compared side by side in a very similar kind of a presentation. So let's say I choose all of the brands we've created, because you can do that. In this report, you can actually choose up to 15, unlike the dashboard where you can only choose 3. Yeah, so if you want to compare multiple things at the same time, it's better to use the comparison report. And here you can actually see that Rare Beauty has received a ginormous spike in mentions on December 5th. And that's actually quite curious. You could then go to the search, Rare Beauty, use the filter right here in the top right, filter it to December 5th, that is to just that. Right here, and we'll choose the same date. You hit apply, and then we have a look at what exactly was said at this time. Maybe something has happened. Maybe there are a lot of mentions on the web. Maybe some sale has started. Maybe something else happened. So yeah, you could go ahead, have a look, and try to see what gives, basically, what's the commotion, and see exactly if maybe you need to react, maybe you need to come up with a sale of your own, for example, or do something else. If we were on the dashboard, for example, I would be able to just click on this widget and just go straight there. In the reports, you unfortunately cannot do that, but nevertheless, they are still a very great visual aid for you to see how you do compared to your competition. All the same rules apply in this widget, in this report type. If there is any widget you dislike, particularly say genders, you can delete it. If you need some more, you can just scroll down, click on the plus button, and add some more. Like, for example, sources by mentions, account types, maybe most active posters, and any other stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty easy. That's how you do it.
Thank you. Let me check if we have some more questions in the chat. I think we answered a couple already, so I don't
It's
think
fine
we
repeating
have
it.
any left.
Yeah,
no,
if there
I
were
think
any questions, I would be
yeah,
glad
so
to repeat
I think
myself.
we answered all the questions actually already, so it's really cool. Thank you, Dmitry. And now for the treat I promised to all our viewers. Let me just share my screen as well.
Yeah.
And tell you what's up. So if you stayed with us, if you were so strong to stay with us for the end of this presentation of this webinar, we give you a little bit of a prize, so to say. So for the very month of December until January, you can send the code Awario Webinars to our chat on the site or through email to our support. You can just go to the site at the top right corner will be the chat option, and you can send the Awario Webinar score code, and the customer support team will give you a free extended trial. So generally, we have a 7-day trial with some limited capabilities when it comes to what Awario can do during this trial. But with this trial, you have all the options open. You have a lot more mentions to play with, to collect, and features to play with in Awario. So this one is actually really cool, and you can try monitoring many competitors and comparing them to your brand as well.
Yeah, it's actually a great deal. Generally, our trials are indeed only 7 days. You'll have a bit more time, and you'll have a bit more features to test and see if the tool really does what you believe it does. And in case you don't, feel free to reach out the same way you did for the code in the chat or via email, and our customer support team will be happy to help, me included.
Exactly, yeah, Dmitry won't tell a lie. So that's it for our webinar today. I hope you had fun and learned something new. And oh, I must tell you, I'm noticing that you're writing the code to the chat of the YouTube stream that you're watching. Unfortunately, we can't this way know like what user you are, so you have to go to the website, to awario.com, as it says on the screen, and type it into the chat on the website. So please do that. This Berson and Victor's, the users that just typed it into the chat on YouTube, please go to our website and put the code in there, and then you will get your free extended trial. Yeah. So thank you everyone for being together with us today. If you have any more questions that you couldn't ask right now, or maybe you're watching it as a recording later, you can always contact our customer support team, and they will help you set up Awario to get the most out of it. And of course, just, you know, contact us anytime if you have any questions. So that's it. Yeah. Thank you, Dmitry, again for your expertise. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day, evening, night, wherever you are right now.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.